All right, it is now 6:32 on February 10th, 2022. Welcome to the Town of Sherborn Select Board meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and please ask the town administrator to please read the agenda.
Good evening. So I first call the meeting to order. You'll call the meeting to order, and then the board can vote to amend or approve the agenda. At 6:30, the board is going to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to threatened potential litigation if the chair so declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the select board in the town, and the chair so declares, to discuss the town library pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 3 and 7, and Suffolk Construction versus DCAM 449, Mass 444, parentheses 2007. The board will then take a roll call vote to go into executive session and will return to open session at 7 p.m. where there will be a public comment from Brian Conley. Item number 1 is the consent agenda, which is the payroll warrant and next meeting dates. Item number 2 is the consideration of an increase in farm pond fees starting for the 2022 season, which will be brought to you by Jeannie Guthrie. She's also going to bring forward a request for the installation of new fencing at Farm Pond, and that is a capital item. Item number 3 is the consideration of regional public safety dispatch, and the presentation and discussion will be brought to you by Police Chief Tom Galvin and Director Stephen Hoke of the Holbrook Public Safety. Item number 4 is our FY23 omnibus budget reviews, elder housing budget, and capital item, which is a window replacement, and Kitty Sturgis and Steve Petty will bring that to the board. The Council on Aging will come with their budget, and the COA director here will be here, and Pete Hoagland will be with her. Then there's the Veterans Agent budget, and Diana Hoke, our Veterans Agent, will present that. Historical Commission with Peggy Novak. Then the Building Inspector will be here with Chris Canny. Finance and Accounting budget with Deb Seffering, the Interim Finance Director, and the Insurance budget with Diane Moores and Deb Seffering. Item number 5 is the consideration of acceptance of grants. There's a Mass Department of Fire Services safety grant, and the amount of $12,000 is being brought forward by Zach Water, Fire Chief. We also have a Community Compact IT grant with Gino Carlucci, our town planner, and a level 3 charging station grant with Gino Carlucci. Item 6 is the draft warrant checklist. Tonight before you will be Planning Board has 2 articles, a floodplain district and lot width. But I believe that we're going to amend the agenda to take the lot width off, and he's only going to bring the floodplain district forward.
Okay.
And Chris Owen will be here with him. Then Addie May will be here to present the Affordable Housing Trust update to the bylaw. Number 7 is consideration of routine business, which will be Selectmen reports and the interim town administrator reports. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Do I have any motions or amendments relative to the agenda?
I move, and we can talk about it in open session when we reconvene, that we consider a spot somewhere on the agenda to discuss plans for the town caucus.
Okay, I do want to say though, this is officially open session.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, and it's on within there.
But there's no one,
Did you want?
not many people here right now.
No, and we talk about, do you want a specific agenda item, or do you want to handle it under like what's it called, citizens, what's it called, public comment? Or do you want to actually do a standalone?
I think we should. Well, I didn't want to do select board reports, Marion, only because that'll be 10 p.m. and no one will be here to hear it if we wait till then. And town caucus would probably interest more of the people attending. So
Okay.
I just thought we could put it in somewhere. It's not really, normally you could do something not anticipated 48 hours in advance, but it's not really an urgent item, but it's coming up targeted for March 5th right now. And we need to talk about it a little bit. So we can maybe go into the open session to decide where's a logical break or something.
Well, it is open. I don't want to say it.
Yeah.
I don't know what other thoughts. I don't know if Paul has any thoughts on the legality. If we're not voting, I guess you can't discuss in public comment, can you? you can't really have, you shouldn't have a dialogue. It's just basically someone given a platform. So I guess maybe unless if it's more than that, then maybe we can actually create essentially an agenda item right after the consent agenda.
Yeah, if I could comment, Eric,
Yeah, please.
the town caucus committee needs to make some plans for the upcoming caucus.
Yeah.
And as part of that, they want to use a town building, namely the DPW garage.
Okay.
And if we wait till the next meeting, it will be too late for their planning purposes. Because the caucus, I think, is March 5th.
Yep.
So the idea would be for there to get a preliminary indication from us as to whether or not we would allow the use of the DPW garage for the purpose of town caucus on March 5th. And if so, then we confirm it later at some later time, but that would be enough to give them what they need to go forward and do their planning and set up the caucuses.
So is it appropriate if we simply have basically a modified agenda item after consent agenda to allow this discussion? As it
Yes,
wasn't
'cause it's-
foreseeable in 48 hours?
Yeah.
I want to hear from Sean in a second. I just want to make sure legally it's okay that we do that. Okay,
Yes.
that's what we'll do. So that'll be a modified agenda. We'll basically have a discussion after consent agenda. Yeah, Sean.
That's exactly, I was just gonna suggest or ask that you just give the DPW director a quick item after the public comment or the consent agenda. And I can just throw it out there. We don't need, I don't think we need a vote. We just need to discuss it real quick.
Yeah, okay. Okay, very good. Okay, so now do I have any motions or further discussion about the agenda?
I think Jeff moved to approve it, but I'll move to approve an amended agenda to add that item.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Jeff,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
and Paul.
Hi.
So now moving forward, as chair, I declared an executive session is warranted for the agenda item as previously read by the town administrator. And therefore I move that we actually go into exit open session, go into executive session with the intent to come back into open session per the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Jeff,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
and Paul.
Hi.
Okay, Paul, Jeff, feel free. Okay, welcome back. We have we're now back in open session, out from executive session. It's now 7:08 and we'll resume the agenda. For people who weren't here for the initial reading of the agenda, the select board moved to added an item that was unforeseen within 48 hours for a report from the DPW director relevant to the location of the caucus. That'll be basically between agenda items number 1 and 2. So all being said, we have a request for public comment from Brian Connolly. Brian, feel free, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Eric. I just wanted to make a comment on the library construction project, and we did award a winning bidder for the ductwork replacement work earlier this week when the library building committee met, and the library trustees were part of that as well. We've awarded to a company called Apex Corporation. They came in. It was actually the only bid we received, and their bid was $779,000. We had estimated about $772,000, so it's pretty close to what the estimate was. Our project manager, CHA, has done all the reference checking and make sure they're a qualified bidder, which they are. So we're just wanted to make the comment that we've awarded that bid and they will be doing the ductwork replacement work.
Thank you very much, Brian. Okay, moving on. Number 1, consent agenda. Do I have any motions or discussions relevant to the consent agenda?
I move that we approve it as read by the interim town administrator at the start of the meeting.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I see Paul still up. I think he'll be fine with this vote without him. All in favor, Jeff,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
and I might as well. All right, so next up, it'll be our report for, a report from the DPW Director, Sean Clean, relevant to caucus and potential location for caucus, which is right now scheduled for March 5th.
Hi, thanks for adding that to the agenda. I just wanted to update the board and the public in general that the caucus committee has approached us to do the town caucus this year inside the DPW garage. Last year, for those that went, remember that it was outside at Pine Hill on the steps. It went really well, but they're doing it on March 5th. So the fear is it'll be cold. You know, it could be snowing, who knows? Not the best time to be standing outside of the front steps. So I felt it was best to at least bring it up here, make sure everyone's okay with that. And also announce it publicly that they're planning on doing it here, the 5th at 10 a.m. It'll be mostly standing room. There will be chairs for those that need them, but the plan isn't to put 300 chairs in like we used to do at the community center this year.
Why can't they do it at the community center?
From my understanding, they talked to the Board of Health and they were told not to, they didn't feel safe having it at the community center. That's,
Oh,
I wasn't involved in that.
It wasn't review of the Board of Health. It was just the caucus committee, which is Rick Novak and George Fisk, and they spoke to Daryl, but the Board of Health didn't issue any kind of official recommendation. They felt the DPW garage would be safer, but they didn't issue any direct statement to that effect.
I will
So
say,
I think that with the older citizen population, though, it's the community center is very dense when we're normally in there. You know how it is standing in the back of the room there.
I mean, a quick comment before I recognize Paul. I will say I felt the town meetings were successful. Maybe it's a different time of year. Maybe having it in DPW garage in May is different than March. But I also felt Pine Hill was successful as well when he did it there. Yeah, Paul.
I was just going to ask you all to consider moving town meeting to May and to move the caucus by a month forward so that it would be April 5th rather than March 5th. It'll be a lot warmer, a lot better participation, and town meeting would be a lot warmer also. So
Oh, sorry.
I don't think it's necessary. I think people are being overly, we're still trying to cancel everything. We're still, it's over the top. Come on, we're past this. Look at the cases, how much they've dropped. I don't know.
Well, let me interject there because I want to at least be recognized. I had one question for Paul, and then I want to make comments. So Paul, if we actually made those extensions, would we actually have to move the election as well?
Yes.
All those things require the moving of the election. I can see the point of the caucus being, because it's very, very close. I know they have the school mask mandate and in February 28th, but it's up to individual communities and blah, blah, blah. I think, and I could be wrong here, that maybe by May, by the time town meeting actually happens, we'll probably be back in Limpus Commons and be kind of on a normal routine to some extent there. I do see George's point, like right now, there still is concern. The positives or whatever, the detections, and I'd maybe like to hear from the Board of Health. I've not, they're going down, but we were still caucus is literally just a couple weeks away, really. But I think to push town meeting out in May might be a little premature. At least that's my opinion. Marianne.
And we've got to remember, we are a town that's what, 90% vaccinated?
Something like that, a little higher, I think.
How many cautions and how many, let's try to get some normalcy back so we can get some mental health precautions back in this town. We got to think of mental health, not just scared of COVID.
Well, I agree with George about the mental health thing, but I don't think that the town meeting is going to be a mental health event one way or the other. Looking at the data, which we get almost weekly from Matt Vitale, things are a lot better. You're right, George, absolutely. But if you compare the rate of new infections now from the rate of new infections a year ago, it's much higher actually now. It's just better than it was a few weeks ago. But
Are
it's
we just
still
basing it
very
on
high.
rates of infection or how sick people are actually getting? Are we getting people actually hospitalized, or since we're so highly vaccinated in town, are people just getting a little bit sick?
Well, I think people are still getting hospitalized. You hear the hospitals are still under tremendous stress because enough people are getting sick to have an impact on the hospital. So, I mean, I don't think it's a tremendous disruption to the town to delay it to when we can be outside. And everybody, including older people and people with health problems, they are the ones that'll be hospitalized so that they can be comfortable going to town meeting.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Jackie, please.
Thank you. I just want to caution everyone that I need to be very involved if you guys are going to move the dates, because we are under specific Mass General Law guidelines about specific dates on nomination papers. You know, when you guys have to get the ballot questions to me. It's not just as easy, we move the dates and then everything's fine. It's not. I am still under a Mass General Law with specific dates that we have to follow. The other issue is that if you guys are going to do it at DPW, be prepared to spend a lot of money out of the ARPA funds. It's $14,000 approximately to set up the video and everything else in there. And with the rates going down, I mean, I am still wearing my mask when I go to the grocery store, and I get that everyone is concerned. But with the rates going down, I think it's premature to start thinking about moving the dates for the election and town meeting. We've had the election, you know, inside, and I know we did it at DPW garage before, but I would just caution, you know, I would go slowly. I would not move too quickly. We still have time, but you guys are still going to be under the same deadline to get the ballot questions to me, like April 7th, whether or not you move the meeting, the town election out to June or July or whatever. We're still going to be under the same deadlines, and it's going to be very expensive to do it at the DPW garage. I would prefer to go back. I would prefer to go back to the high school. I mean, if the numbers go up, then I completely understand. But if they are going down, I think we can start going back. And we can also recommend masks. And I just want to remind everyone, per Mass General Law, we cannot dictate to people that you have to wear a mask at the election or town meeting. That is infringing on someone's right to vote. And if there's like a 1 vote difference and you force somebody to leave, that's a real problem. So we can recommend masks to still be made. And if someone insists that they're not wearing a mask, I can keep them in Timbuktu away from everybody that has the mask. So there are things that we can do, but we cannot mandate that people have to wear masks. We can recommend, but that's it. So I just want to caution everybody, please, you know, do not make arbitrary decisions. I really need to be involved in this.
Okay, I appreciate that certainly about the moving of the dates and so on like that. As far as the mask, we've done 2 town meetings now, and it hasn't been an issue whatsoever. And I think the mask mandates are going down. I think that's going to be a non-issue whatsoever. But I got to ask about the costs. There's no video. There's no electronic voting. It's nothing but putting seats out. And I think, unless Rick's doing something different, it's a really big sheet of paper and a Sharpie. Like, that's the biggest technology that there is in caucus. And a bunch of people saying aye, and maybe they hand out a piece of paper. We did it on the steps of the elementary school. Excuse me. No, we did it on the steps of elementary school with like no effort whatsoever. How does it cost $15,000 to do the exact same thing at DPW garage versus the steps elementary school versus the community center?
No, I'm sorry, you misunderstood me. I'm not talking about caucus. I said, if you guys are going to move the dates on the election, please be cautious about the election and town meeting. Because if you want to have the town meeting at the DPW garage, it's extremely expensive. I've already spoken to Sean. He's not going to be spending, it's not going to be like cleaning the whole garage for caucus. It's going to be a very simple thing from what my conversation is. So I'm talking about, you know, moving the elections and even moving the caucus date. If you move the caucus date, you're going to start bumping into problems with dates. Even moving the caucus date, I'm talking about having the moving the election and moving town meeting and keeping it at DPW garage. If you do that, it's very expensive for town meeting. And it will be, we will have to use ARPA funds. And I just want everybody to keep that in mind. Because if it's safe for everybody to go to Lindquist Commons the end of April, we're talking about almost, 2.5 months from now. Hopefully the numbers will be way down and it'll be safe to go back to some kind of normalcy. And like I said, at town meeting, if everybody's still concerned, we can still ask people to wear masks, and those that don't, I can sit them in a different section of the auditorium. I'm just saying, please be careful with all of the dates, because every caucus, there are dates that I have. Caucus is not a town run event, but I am still involved in it because of nomination papers, et cetera. And it's still too early in the game to figure out who's going to run and if we're going to have any contested races. But there are dates for nomination papers, for getting certified nomination. They're all dates, and they all relate back to when caucus is, and they relate back to the election date. A lot of these dates have to be like 51 days before the election or 49 days before the election. It's complicated. So I need to make sure that you guys are totally involving me and not arbitrarily making decisions without speaking to me first, or at least acknowledging my, input. That's all.
Right.
That's all I
Like-
ask.
I like Mary Ann, then Sean. So Mary Ann, go ahead.
Yeah, we totally hear you, Jackie. I appreciate what you're saying. And if we're proposing caucus right now, proposing caucus at the DPW garage, I guess that's what we're talking about. That's fine. But I think I agree with most of you that we don't know which way we don't know where we're going to be in March and April. Let's put off the decision on town meeting until the very last possible time. And of course, Jackie, you would be part of the decision.
Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask to reel it back to only a caucus. This
Yeah.
wasn't even on the agenda.
No, that's a good point. I think someone made a comment about
I
that.
just, we should either walk away with a blessing to do the caucus here in this building, because I don't own it, or not.
The caucus is still March 5th. Still, I think it's 10 a.m., whatever it is. And I support putting it in the DPW garage with a big pad of paper.
I second that.
So I raised the issue of changing the date from March 5th to some later date because of the weather in New England on March 5th is always not the best. Whereas even 2 weeks later, it's a big difference.
I don't think this board really has any purview on the date, though.
No, we don't.
You don't.
And I don't think we should be changing anything.
Could have been in November.
We're just here basically to authorize use of the DPW building. And I support the use of the DPW building. I don't know if we have to vote it or anything, but especially since it's not a posted agenda item, but I support the use of the DPW building on March 5th or whenever the caucus wants to use it.
I'll
That's
make a
simple.
motion that we can use the DPW garage for the caucus. If that,
All right,
I don't know if we need to vote or not, but I would second that motion. if
I think
want
we
to.
should vote just so they.
Go through it.
We're okay with it.
Yep. Okay, all in favor, Jeff,
All right,
Marianne,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
I might as well. Okay, that's good enough.
Thank you.
More food for thought. Okay. So moving on, agenda item number 2, consideration of increase in farm pond fees starting for the 2022 season. Jeannie Guthrie. There you go.
I'm hoping this will be quick.
Hmm.
I've sent you some information. The fees haven't been increased for farm ponds since 2015. The cost is rising to run the pond, minimum wage. We've spent money on erosion control, water testing, not just the beach area, but throughout the pond. We bought some equipment for like a small microscope, but everything is rising. So I'm suggesting 75 to 85 for the first sticker, 25 to 35 for the second. You can raise it more. It's up to you. But I think it's a start.
So I have a
So just-
question.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I saw your analysis. I thought it was great, but I also saw a request for an additional capital item. And my reaction was, why not take the cost of the capital item and include it in the calculation and set the rate so that it covers not only what you have in your calculations, but also what you're asking for that additional capital item.
Well, the capital item is, yes, it's for the gate to the boat ramp. But it's also with the work that we're gonna have done to pull up the pavement and put gravel down. It slows down the rainwater flying down there. So it also is going to increase the health of the pond or help with the health of the pond. And so for people who just use the beach to be paying for like everything, I just didn't know if that was the way you wanted to go.
Well, you're estimated on the cost of the capital project, I think was like 40,000.
No, it was 25,000.
25,000. So if we borrowed that over, 20 years, and we added it to the computation, you're talking maybe $5, maybe $10 on the rate.
So you want to go from 75 to 95?
Well, just a second, Paul, you're mixing capital and operating again. Like capital items are something that are supposed to be spread over time, the costs, so people aren't paying for it all this year, people are getting the benefit from it 15 years down the road. That's why we separate operating and capital. It's not, we shouldn't be mixing these things. I think Jeannie did it completely right by proposing the fees and keeping the capital item that people need to vote whether we spend capital. You can't just lump it in.
I think, George, that part of it was because Farm Pond's a revolving fund, and we've used those funds in the past for the new roof on the bathhouse, to do the new docks. We used part of the money for it. I think that's why he was looking at it that way. But the pond there's a larger picture now with the pond and where the budget goes. And we spend like $9,000 a year on rangers from 6 to 9 in the morning. And that's just basically to make sure boats are washed down to keep the pond healthy. It has nothing to do with the beach being run. So I think that's where Paul was kind of looking at, because we've always taken money out of the revolving fund to do these repairs, but it's just Farm Pond's just getting more expensive now. And that's why we need to bring more money in.
Yeah, Jeannie, another question I had about bringing in more money is, how are we doing with like out of town, like how many applications do we get for out of town permits versus how many people do we allow, and what do we charge for that, and can we increase that?
We charge $300 for a non-resident sticker, and we sell.
It went up last year.
The amount went up last year. We were doing 125. We increased it to 150. We did not sell 150.
Okay, how many did we sell last year?
I think we sold about 130, maybe. And
say a non-COVID year, do you usually have a lot more applications than you do what we like? Go back to like 2019. Did we have a lot more applications than that?
Well, what we have more, and if we have swim team this year, we have a lot of Dover families who are on the swim team who get a full sticker and pay the $300. So I think if swim team is back this year, we will have that. And that's at least another 20, 25 families.
Right.
And just, so if 130 times 300 is about almost 39, it's like basically $40,000. So that's about the revenue we probably get. Maybe we get 50,000 in a better year, right there. I remember doing the math last year on this whole thing there. I mean, I think 300 is a good number. I wouldn't propose putting that up any further. I don't know,
but I think this is a good idea to increase this fee. I think it makes sense. We haven't done it since 2015. The cost of everything else is going up, so We might as well. I mean, we need to cover our costs as well, so.
Yeah.
Maybe we should consider, sometimes I advocate going with the higher number 85, just so that then maybe we don't have to 3 years from now raise it again. If we do 80, if we did 75 now, we might have to come back
No,
in 3 years.
it is 75 now, George.
Oh, that's what it is
Jeff,
right
yeah.
now?
Yeah.
It's 75 now?
Yep.
Right.
Oh, then we should definitely do 85 at least, if not 90, I think, because you don't, if you can keep from like raising it every year, it probably is better.
So my point was to go to more like the 90 or 95, so that you have the money to do not just paying for lifeguards, but when things need to be done, there's a revenue source there that will be there to keep the pond healthy and to keep the operation a first-class operation.
So just to clarify, the debt service on this fence is this capital item, does it come from revolving fund?
I think it does.
So if it does, no matter what, then I mean, it's almost a moot point, to be honest. You know, as
I
long as the
think-
revolving fund pays for this capital item, whatever it is, if it got adjusted, we adjust it, maybe make it a higher amount, make it 90 or something like that. It seems to be kind of a safe assumption, and it kind of, I think, meets everyone's goals on this, in this call.
And I think if you look at the spreadsheet, we actually lost a ton of revenue in 2020 because obviously no one, you know,
Right.
because it was restricted. I think we'll replenish the revenue a little bit by just having a normal demand year for stickers with residents. In addition to George's good point about more out-of-town residents with swim teams. So I think you'll see a turnaround in revenue due to the increase in cost, but also higher demand.
I do
People
have,
can actually enjoy the beach again. Like 2 years ago, you couldn't, I went there once and there was that stupid
Yeah.
yellow and never went back, so.
not
So-
anymore.
I go
Gene-
every day.
So Gene, just to
Eric,
kind-
I have a quick question. When you say that the capital item will come out of the revolving fund, so it will not be a capital item, it's gonna come out of the farm pond revolving fund?
well, is this still a capital item? Isn't it still a capital item? You take a loan, you take a thing, blah, blah, blah. You just have to designate that the revolving fund pays the debt service.
Right, like I went
I
in
don't know.
front of capital already about it.
Okay.
I don't
But I
know how
thought,
the
like-
funding's done. It's a good question. I don't think I know. George, you might remember, but I don't.
I think,
Because
I
you know
think it
that
doesn't,
even-
it's not up to, like, it's, capital items need to be approved no matter where the funding source comes from. I mean, it's a 2/3 vote if we're gonna borrow money for it, but
Mhm.
you still need to approve capital items the same as any other capital item. That's just.
But
the way it
But I
works.
don't think we borrow for them. Like if you think of we're gonna have elder housing later tonight, elder housing, it comes out of the elder housing capital resolving fund, not out
But
of.
we
the
still have to
town
approve
fund,
their capital items.
The
So-
project.
I'll give you,
yes.
I'll give you one example. So, you know, in a town I know a little bit about, or a city I know a little bit about, you actually do have capital items paid by enterprise funds, as long as revolving funds. And particularly enterprise funds, they're voted with 2/3, everything else is just called out in town meeting that the debt service is paid by a different fund than the general fund. It's that simple. And I just want
But
to.
we've actually done that with capital items in the past
Mhm.
here too, like we say, well, we're gonna pay for this out of free cash instead of.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
Right.
but
But
In
my-
that-
Marianne, go ahead. I see Marianne's been raising her hand for a while. I'd like to hear her. Go ahead, Marianne.
In that case, there is no debt service. If you just
Right.
pay it out of the revolving fund, there's no debt service involved, right?
Well, no,
I
there
have-
still is. There still is. You just pay the debt service with the revolving fund. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So you loan it over 10 years, whatever it is, and you pay X amount of dollars per year. That debt service or that, you know, the payment, the loan payment for all intents and purposes is out of the revolving fund. Does that make sense?
it does,
Yes.
but I don't think that's what we do. As Heidi's on here, I don't know that we've ever borrowed for farm pond
I
revolving.
mean,
Heidi-
You're not actually borrowing on, on public borrowing. You're borrowing from the revolving fund.
No,
It's still
we're
public
just-
borrowing. It's still public fund. It's public borrowing. It really is. You know what I mean? This is, I'll say it, like in Framingham, they have the water sewer enterprise funds. Enterprise fund, a little different. It goes by fiscal years, but it's different than the general fund. And there's borrowing, there's loans, there's debt service. You know, the fees that are acquired in that are paid for, pay that debt service. I don't see why a revolving fund would be any different. I really don't.
I hear you. Let's
Okay, I
listen.
see-
to-
Heidi has her hand raised.
Heidi has her hand up, Joe, and I
Yeah.
would like to
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
from her.
Heidi, go ahead.
Oh, hi. So we have borrowed for Farm Pond, the docks, it was 25,000 and it went into our debt service. And I do not
Okay.
believe there was any revolving fund that paid it. I believe the town's debt service was paid unlike Woodhaven, which specifies that they actually pay from their revolving fund for it.
think-
Deb might be able to show on the accounting side where it came, but I believe it was strictly from the town that covered the debt service for the docks.
No,
that-
that's not really right, actually, Heidi, because what happened is, for the docks, the Farm Pond revolving fund, I think, if I remember correctly, put $50,000 contributed to it. The
Right,
town itself put $25,000 to it, which is what we borrowed. So we
Right.
didn't borrow for the Farm Pond revolving fund share of the cost, only for the town share.
So it's a
Right, but the
predetermined
20
split, which makes sense.
So
So,
what you're saying, the town still paid for that portion.
but
Right,
just
the
because we
tw-
did
Yes.
that, doesn't mean we can't in the future. And
Correct.
that's the question is,
Correct.
in the future, everything I've ever worked with, I'll
Yeah.
recognize Paul in a second, everything we ever worked with, it seems to indicate that if you have a separate fund, it's a public fund, it's out here
Yeah.
by public rules, it's just not the general tax base, not the general fund. I still see no reason why that fund cannot pay the debt service if that's how it's voted in town meeting. Yeah, Paul.
So the point I've been trying to make from the beginning of this discussion is that the fee that we set for Farm Pond should include the amount of potential debt service on this capital project. And to me, just trying to do it in my head, that's like an additional $5. So if the recommendation based on the operating costs that we have been seeing is 85, then I would say there should be 90, because then you have some money in the fund that you can use to pay for debt service.
Exactly. And also, you have the money to pay for the other mitigation of the pavement or whatever that you need to keep the pond healthy. And that
Yes.
certainly could be included in the revolving fund.
So I guess, and again, we can adjust it again if it's not enough, and do the math. I'm gonna put it back on Jeannie. Jeannie, do you have a recommendation? 85, 90, 95?
I think that already you've spent between the gates and the Capitol and the fencing and the pavement, we might as well go to 100. I guess, what, do you want to go to 90?
That's what I
Um,
would recommend.
Yeah. Let's go.
I'd
Hey,
like
how many resident stickers do we sell each year?
Last year we sold, hold on, sorry. Last year we sold a total of like 600 of the first stickers and 400 second stickers.
All right. So I just did some.
Was that down from the typical years of like 2019?
Yeah.
I think overall pond stickers are decreasing. People go away more. It's not like they buy them like they used to. So if we raise it by 10, it's another 5,700, 56,000, and then another 4. But if
All
you
right.
want to go with 15, then we can do that also.
I just did some quick math actually on my calculator, and even at a 10-year loan, it's probably going to be $5 a person, based on the first 600. So I suggest 90.
I think 90 is exactly a 20% increase too. So we probably don't want to do more than 20%.
I agree. And then just keep the second sticker at 35. So then if a family's getting it, it's 125 for the 2 stickers.
Yep.
That seems
All right.
good.
That makes sense.
So can I
Yeah,
make
Paul.
to do exactly what Georgia said, 90 for the first, 35 for the second.
Okay, sounds good. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Jeff,
All right.
Marianne,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
I am also aye. And Paul, if you could put your hand down, please, because then.
I just did it for you, Paul.
Oh, did-
I just
okay.
did it for you.
Okay, very good.
I think
Now,
so.
we didn't announce it. That takes care of agenda items 2 and 2A. Unless there's anything else you want to say about 2A, I think that vote took care of that as well.
I think we're done.
Okay,
Thanks, Jeannie.
Thank
as
you.
always, thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Consideration of regional public safety dispatch. It's a presentation discussion by our police chief, Tom Galvin, and director Stephen Hoke of the Holbrook Public Safety. So I'll turn it over to Chief Galvin. How you doing, Chief?
Well, good evening and thank you. So this is a discussion that we introduced a few meetings back. And it's kind of been a fast moving and exciting process. And we really have an exciting opportunity for the town to not only improve its overall public safety service to the residents, but also get some issues with the police budget under control that's been plaguing the town for many years. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yep, you're okay.
So I'll start with a little bit of a PowerPoint. And so what happened is shortly after I began working for the town in November, Chief Ward and I, we actually had already started discussions, but we formalized those discussions and we were able to join an already existing regionalization study of our dispatch services. So what currently happens is we here in Sherborn have a dispatch run out of the police department. We are budgeted to have 3 civilian communication specialists, and then the gap is filled in with 1.5 positions of the police from the police department. Unfortunately, all 3 of those positions are unfilled. So right now, all of our dispatch services are provided by police officers, basically on a part-time basis. It is part of their revolving shift, a portion of each rotation each week, officers work on the desk. Unfortunately, that becomes a very costly endeavor, and it leads to additional overtime costs, as I'll explain as we move forward. But as part of this study, we joined the towns of Medway, Millis, Medfield, Holliston, and Dover in looking at the potential for either combining the 6 communities into a regional dispatch or looking at pre-existing regional dispatch centers, and if some of the towns or all of the towns could join those centers. Just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, we started out looking at the call volumes, and this is just based on 911 calls. And one thing that's very interesting is that as you look at us, you know, we're the smallest population on the list, and we have roughly just over 1,400 911 calls that come into our dispatch center per year. But you look just above us in Millis, double the population and nearly the same number of 911 calls.
Hey, Tom, can you blow up your screen to be full screen? Just so
Yeah,
I have it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I have.
go to presentation mode down here.
Yeah.
I think you want to click on presentation mode if you can.
That one better? No.
Yeah,
Yes.
perfect.
Thank you. Much
Sorry
better.
about that. I'm working on 2 screens and I didn't realize which one was
That's
being.
all right.
Now I
shared.
can see the numbers, so thank
Okay,
you.
I apologize. So it just shows our numbers. As I said, roughly we have 4,400 residents, 1,400 911 calls, and then a neighbor, Millis, with 8,400 residents and nearly the same amount of 911 calls. So for a small community, we have a busy center. And then you look at Dover, which is a larger community, a drastically drop in the number of overall 911 calls. So the evaluation in this study was looking at the calls, the call volume, and the services needed, and how we could look at alternatives to providing the services. Because each one of these communities self-dispatches, and many of them are employing multiple dispatchers on duty at a time. So the way the process was done is they conducted interviews in each community. Basically, they looked and spoke with each police chief, each fire chief. They visited each one of the term is PSAP, a public safety answering point, which is the dispatch center. And they looked at, how our centers operated. They looked at the potential to the capacity and quickly found out that we didn't have the capacity to take on all 6 communities in any one of the communities. An alternative would have to be looked at. And then they assessed 3 potential regional centers for us to join. So as we looked into this regionalization, we looked at what are we looking for? What is the outcome of this? Because we are all currently functioning today. So one thing, and this is highlighted across the board with public safety, is staffing and staffing issues. But some of the things that are highlighted is more professional dispatchers. And I'm not saying that our dispatcher or our dispatching service isn't professional, but we've hired police officers, and dispatching is not what they choose to do. It's not the career path they've chosen. And I think at times our service can suffer because of that. So that goes into more effective, more, qualified dispatchers, a higher level of experience. They dispatch things on more frequency. That, I think that's an important thing to note. We had a fire on Christmas Eve, and we had a police officer working the desk, dispatching a multi-alarm fire. A lot of services that need to be done the way that our fire services are handled here in Sherborn, especially getting water to the scene. And we had someone that had been working for our police department for a year and never dispatched anybody to a fire scene. So although it was a positive outcome that night, things definitely could have been done better. We look at surge capability. So when we have a storm, we have large scale power outages, trees down, we have one person here fielding those calls. Upgrades in technology and equipment. That's one thing that we do need to consider. We have a 22-year-old facility here. So there are radio consoles and dispatch consoles and software that do need to be upgraded. And those are costs that would be incurred by the community in the future. So there's a lot of things that we looked into and that were looked into through this study. So ultimately, what does the study recommend? So it actually recommends that we look into joining one of 3 existing regional centers. So the 3 centers that were recommended that we look at were the Holbrook Regional Emergency Communications Center, Metacomet, which is in Norfolk, and Southeast Massachusetts, which is in Foxborough. And so once we received the recommendations, Chief Warder and I had already been talking about it and started to talk more, and we started to vet the 3 centers and to try and make a determination on what would be the best direction for us to go. Both of us, through our professional networks and learning about the centers, quickly narrowed it down to 2. Metacomet, really in their current state, although they could take on more, really isn't in the best position to take on more. They would have to do some physical construction at their site, changing over like a training room to be able to add more to the dispatch center. So we really started looking much more closely at Holbrook and Foxborough. And we did site visits to both. The first site visit we did to Holbrook was Chief Ward and I, along with Sergeant Nolte and Sergeant Tedstone. We did a visit out to Foxborough, again, Chief Ward and I, Sergeant Nolte, Sergeant Tedstone, as well as Lieutenant Buckler. And, we evaluated the center and looked at, what services they delivered and what would work best for us. One thing I can say is that looking at both centers, incredible state-of-the-art facilities that have the latest technology and have, an incredible staff and a career path. Ultimately, when we looked at Foxborough, was the most expensive of all the alternatives. And also they didn't, unfortunately, they didn't offer all of the services that we need. One thing that they don't do, which is very important, especially to a smaller agency or community like us, is answer business line phone calls, so that we would still need someone here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that would be able to just answer the phone when it's a non-911 call. So we really began looking closely at Holbrook, and we actually made a second visit to Holbrook, and Diane and Sean were able to accompany us to visit the center. And Lieutenant Buckler. So now kind of where do we go from here, and what are the next steps? This, with the recommendation, that kind of outlines a lot of things that we have to do in planning for a transition. One of the most important on my end, and I think the most of the pressure is going to fall on me for that, is community outreach. There's a lot of discussion and a lot of things that we're going to have to do with the community to make sure that they understand that the level of service that we are going to provide is actually better. It's going to look a little bit different in the beginning, but it's something that they will quickly get used to because of the professional service that they're going to receive. And then there's a lot of transitional things that are going to be required that we would work with the center to move towards. So we looked at what we thought the outcomes would be. What are the benefits going to be? Some standardization of protocols. That was even a discussion we just had today. Obviously, more resources and those things that are available. Costs, which I will get into very shortly. A better mutual aid effort, and just a more effective and capable dispatch center, having people that are career dispatchers and communication professionals, and that this is what they want to do. So what's available to us as we make this transition? The state 911 department has a substantial amount of grant funding. So that's something that we all pay into with our cell phone. Every time we pay our cell phone bill, there's a charge that goes into the state 911 fund. So they have a development grant program, and that's what would the initial application would be into the development grant. That would be all of the needs for us to transition. So there would be no costs incurred by the community to make this transition. Any upgrades or changes to the radio system, to our records management system, to the actual physical facilities and technology changes would all be paid for by the state. There's also a transition award, and I think that's one of the greatest benefits that this program now has is they really make it easy for the community to change in the beginning. So this just to give an example of what we had looked at with the budgets for each community, and and that they figured out what our current operating costs were. And I'll give you a breakdown in a minute of our costs. But it was just to note that when we figured our costs, or when they did the study, they didn't include OPEB and those long-term liabilities that the town faces with any employee. So as we decide to make this regional transition, we have to look at what today's budget is. And if we were to move forward in the traditional way that we've been doing things in next year's budget, we would try and budget for those 3 communication specialist positions again, just over $140,000. Unfortunately, as I said, those positions are unfilled, and in the climate we're in public safety and in employment in general, it's going to be very difficult to fill those positions. I thought it had been only 2 attempts. I learned the other day that actually we've attempted 3 times to fill those positions and have had no luck. And of all those attempts, we ended up with 1 person that was made it to the stage where we would do a background investigation, and unfortunately they didn't pass the background investigation. And we're not unique in this. Almost all of our neighbors are trying to hire dispatchers at this point. Many have down several. And it's really a concern regionally. It's on how dispatch is going to be handled with the lack of people that want to work. We look at it with what we pay. Our pay rates are lower than most of the neighboring communities, substantially lower than what the regional centers are able to pay. And we don't offer a career track. We have dispatchers. We don't have dispatch supervisors. We don't have a director. We don't have training people. We don't have operations people. It's employees that just provide the dispatch service. So with larger centers that are out there, or larger communities that offer a bit of a career track, it makes it unfortunately a less desirable position to apply for. So looking at that funding, we have to look at what also is creating a problem for us, which is our overtime, because the way we work right now, we have 3 police officers assigned to each shift, 2 that work on the street, and 1 that now is covering the desk with the lack of those positions. And so that leads us to anytime someone takes a day off, we have to backfill with overtime. So, we look at what our overtime budget is for this year. We're currently budgeted at 192, just under $193,000. Before payroll was done today, this morning, we were at 171, almost 5 in expenditures for the fiscal year. So we're not going to be able to stay within budget this year. So what I figured to work us through the transition was to actually remove the communication specialists from the budget, and to take about half of that money, increase our overtime budget, and that would get us to a transition phase. Because if we make a decision tonight to move towards regional dispatch, it would take until January of next year to actually get up and running. This isn't something that we'd be able to do in a very quick time frame. There's a lot of things that have to be done right, a lot of things technology-wise that need to be put in place to make sure that the transition is smooth. So again, I talked about the transition and the transition award that's available. So for the first 3 years that we transition, there would be 0 cost to the community. The state 911 department would pick up 100% of the costs. So we would end up having an annual assessment to pay to the center. Whatever that assessment is determined to be, state 911 would pay 100% of it. In year 4, state 911 would pay 50% of it. And then in year 5, state 911 would pay 25% of it. So it wouldn't be until 6 years from now that we would actually pay the full assessment of what it would cost to run, the dispatch center. So what we've been presented by the Holbrook Rec is an estimate of what our cost or our assessment would look like. And the proposed fee, if we were to pay a full assessment next year, would be about $295,000. So as you watch and look at the fee schedule, you have those first 3 years where Sherborn's not going to pay anything. So what we would actually be able to do is we've made some changes to the budget for next year that has been presented to advisory. And then when we prepare our FY24 budget, we're not going to need to include a dispatch assessment fee. And we're actually going to be able to roll back the increases in our overtime. And I hope even roll back overtime further as we do an analysis this year to what we can remove from that overtime budget. So to really start to show some substantial savings. And then as we get to year 5, we're still at only 332, paying 249. And we're well under that 381 that we're paying, or I should say not paying, budgeted today. This was a good point that Steve Sy made last night. And as we looked at numbers, that when this 381 number is calculated, it includes the salaries that we budgeted, not what we're actually paying. So we're actually paying more than 381 this year because we're not filling the position with these 3 communication specialists. We're actually paying for police officers to work this spot and paying additional overtime. And this calculation doesn't include that overtime because the overtime really gets attributed to patrol and to the officers on the street, not to the communications. But we look at the salary of 3 communication specialists, the cost of 1.5 positions filled by a patrol officer. We have roughly $20,000 of expenses built into both the police, combined between the police and fire budgets, and then the benefit costs for those employees. And again, as I said, I didn't include in this the overtime costs, the OPEB liability, and then those capital upgrades that I was talking about. That when we look at these capital upgrades, they're not tens of thousands of dollars of upgrades; they're hundreds of thousands of dollars of upgrades in future years that would be needed. So I think as you just do a quick calculation and you look over the next 5 years, if we're to make this change, we're looking at close to $1.5 million in savings. And then when we start paying the full assessment again in year 6, the cost is still going to be lower than what the costs are today. And to give you an example, and because sometimes it's hard to fathom that this is actually real. In my previous position as the police chief in Berlin, we made this same transition. We didn't have the luxury of this transition award, so we started paying assessment fees year 1. But I can say that we transitioned in 2016 there. And if in the FY22 budget this year, the assessment fee that the town of Berlin is paying is still less than what was being paid for dispatch services in 2016. So it actually works. So before I move on, I want to do a little presentation of the center itself. But are there any questions or anything you want to ask now before we move into what the center itself looks like?
George has a question.
I just wanted to be the first. I just want to say, I think this seems like a no-brainer. I'm so excited, Tom, that you spent the time and effort to do this. I think it's long overdue, and I think it would be a benefit not only to the service to the town, but also financial. I don't see why we would not do this. So.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I think Zach deserves a lot of credit as well. This is something that we've done collectively.
And the only other comment I would like to make just real quick. So I talked to the chief about this a few days ago, and maybe I missed it, but something I'd like to highlight is by not having an officer sit on there, like let's say the 3 to 11 shift or whatever else, or maybe the 11 to 7 shift, you're putting an extra officer on this on patrol. But then if someone calls out sick, you're not forcing another officer to fill a gap. You kind of have a little redundancy in the amount of patrol people out there. And having a with the third sergeant, you have definitely a supervisor in every single shift as well. So again, you're less likely, correct me if I'm wrong, chief, to basically do forced overtime, where basically not only you're paying overtime, but you're also, hurting the overall quality of life and maybe having better retainage of officers by not saying to someone, okay, you now have to show up to this because we're understaffed.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads to retention issues, which obviously you've seen that here with the police department. The other thing it's going to allow us to do is to repurpose some of that overtime, because we're not going to be forced to backfill all the time. We're going to be able to allow the officers to do a little bit more training, but also do some more specialized activities and kind of broaden their career path, which all should help with retention, which should also lead to a savings. I look at the amount of turnover, unfortunately, that we've had, and I can even point to 2 positions that were hired in December of 2020, and both of those officers have already left the department. One lasted, 6 months maybe, and his real concern and reason for leaving, he went back to a college agency, was because he couldn't handle working on the desk. And then we just had another officer leave in December, and went to another agency where again, he doesn't have to work the desk. So I think this is going to play into retention of our officers as well, which has an ultimate cost savings down the road.
Absolutely, and it's just right there to
There's a
do.
lot that plays into it.
I'd like to recognize Paul, then Mary Ann. So go ahead, Paul.
So I first need to make a disclosure under the State Ethics Act, Chapter 268A, Section 23B, that I provide legal services to members of this regional emergency communications center, including the host community of Holbrook. But notwithstanding the fact that I do provide those services, I believe I can fairly consider this issue for the town of Sherborn. So that's my this required disclosure under the State Ethics Act. The second thing I wanted to say is that, as I said it the first time we considered this with the chief, I expressed support for going forward with this regional dispatching facility because it's worked well for those towns who have been part of these facilities. They've all worked well. They are the wave of the future. And as I think I've said before, the great benefit is not just the money. It's that you have people who know what they're doing in emergency situations. It's that competence. It's that calmness. When you have somebody who's screaming and upset on the phone, and you have a calm dispatcher who can give assurances and make sure that relief is provided, is an additional element that you can't even quantify with numbers or dollars. It will make our community safer in many ways. So for those reasons, I'm still in support, as I had indicated at the prior meeting, and the presentation I've heard so far has indicated that indeed it makes economic sense to do this also. So to me, as George had said, it's a no-brainer and we should go forward.
Okay, thank you. Mary Ann, please go ahead.
Right, it makes economic sense, even if we didn't have the subsidy from the state 911 development grant. But regarding that grant, I did have a question. In several places, it refers to an application, not a grant, like we're going to apply, or the center is going to apply for this money for the subsidy in the first few years. Is that grant money in hand, or does that have to be applied for annually? Because I see there's an annual grant application involved.
I guess can I defer to Steve? Steve, is that something that you could explain a little bit better for me?
And
Sure.
I'm also wondering, Steve, who actually takes care of the application process? Is that going to be done for us?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Mr. Chair, board members. I appreciate the invite to attend tonight. So to answer your question, this year, the state 911 department set aside $30 million for development of and support of regional centers. That is a competitive grant. However, it's prioritized in different fashions. So fortunately, we are a priority one. And I've done this, I've brought in communities on 5 different occasions here to the Holbrook Regional Center. So each of those occasions, the 911 department has always supported us and given us everything that we've asked for. So although it is a competitive grant, you know, the support from the 911 department is there. They want to move these PSAPs, so that's their goal. As far as who manages the grant, that will be managed out of our center. We'll take care of all the grant writing, all the quotes, everything that has to do with the grant, all the purchases. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay.
I'll make one comment. Yeah. Why is there an echo? Someone. Okay, thank you. Is that you create quite a business model here? Quite an impressive business model. I'll say that. I also had one comment. Oh, sorry. Just one comment I'm going to add. Just I support this as well. I agree with all the previous speakers that this is a no-brainer. The only slight disadvantage I think might be in there, so people know, is that there's going to be no live human being if you ever walk into the police department. You know, to some people, you know, I don't think that's the same as it used to be. I think probably it's a fraction of what we get there. And maybe the chief can talk about. I think there's some kind of there is a type of interface there which you can interface with the dispatching. But I think that's the only kind of only factor. The only, I guess, call it slightly negative factor of the whole program.
Yeah, and that's going to be something that we have to get used to. And as there will be a video interface in the lobby, but also, and to realize this, most of the time during the day, during the week, there still will be somebody in the building at all times. You know, we've added in our budget a part-time administrative assistant, so we'll have that face here. I'll be here most of the time, and someone else usually is in the building. It will be really those times at night where someone probably, you know, they won't be here, and it'll take a minute or two from when they have the interface with the dispatcher until an officer just comes in off the road to meet the person. It'll be very similar to what it is. Now they walk in, they talk to someone through the window, they wait for a minute, and an officer comes off the street and handles the issue. Now it'll be, instead of talking through the window, it'll be through a video interface. So it'll be different, but very similar in many respects. And the dispatchers will have the ability to let people into a safe space or lock down a space if someone feels they're in danger. So there are a lot of safeguards in place if there are issues that arise. And I think that would also be if you flip-flopped where the town hall and the police station are, I think it would be a much bigger issue. The fact that we're set back from the road, that we've gone through 2 years of COVID, we don't get as much foot traffic through this building anymore. I think Zach probably sees more foot traffic or people stopping in for directions and things like that at the fire department.
Okay, is there any more questions from the board? Because after we see a second presentation, I'll take some general questions from the public, but I'll wait till after the second presentation. Is there anything just from the board? Okay.
Excellent. So this just to give you an idea about the center, and this is like Steve's presentation, but I'm going to try and go through it as best I can, and he'll answer questions or fill in where I miss. But so we're looking at joining the Holbrook Regional Emergency Communication Center. This is their mission statement, and I'll leave it up for a minute for people to read. But what I think is important is that they take this seriously. This is a professional group, and they are truly the first of the first responders. They're the first people that people interface with in an emergency. They pick up the phone, they dial 911, and these are the first responders that handle their call. And the fact that they're a professional, well-trained group is what's really going to be important to us. So currently they serve Abington Police and Fire, Canton Fire, Holbrook Police and Fire, Rockland Police and Fire, Sharon Fire, and they're the primary PSAP, so primary 911 answering point for Whitman and dispatch for Whitman Fire. And they also handle Norfolk County control for Fire District 4. So one thing that people may be concerned when they look at this is, well, it's none of our neighboring communities. They don't border us. Fortunately, and I think we all see in our day-to-day lives, that doesn't really matter anymore with technology. And When you look, it's only a couple of towns removed. When you look at the town of Canton, it's only going through Dover and Westwood until we get to Canton. So it's not that far out. And I think as they moved in this direction, we're just the first, and there'll be more to follow, kind of our example in this area. And when it comes down to Norfolk County control, I think that's an important and going to be a benefit to the fire department. On some of our first alarm responses for the fire department, there's 3 Norfolk County fire departments that are responsible for bringing water tankers. And so to have that already as part of the district will be a benefit for our fire service as well. This is just to give you an idea. What I talked about is there's a career path. So this is their org chart. Starts with the director all the way down to part-time dispatchers. But they have a director, a deputy director. They have IT services. They operations manager, training coordinators, a supervisor on every shift, and multiple telecommunicators. It really provides a long-term career path for people that are interested in getting into public safety communications, something that we never would be able to offer. It's just an example of one of the softwares they use. They use it for employee tracking. It tracks the good and the bad. It's really something that is used to them to really track the positive things that their employees do. In the meetings and that we've had with Steve and meeting his employees, there's a lot of good work they do, and they do their best to try and recognize what their employees do using the tracking software. One of the important things is their training. So they use certified training personnel to really work through everything from their policy and procedures right down to their call taking procedures and dispatching procedures. It's a long and arduous process, but they put the right people in the seats to answer the calls and dispatch the services. So it's, as you can see, it's a few slides. It really goes through their extensive training. And when you look at some of the coursework they have to do, and that's not necessarily in-house training, that's in classes versus the in-house actual physical taking calls and training doing those. And they're a recognized or accredited dispatch center for NECMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So if God forbid we ran into any type of a situation with a child abduction or something in those lines, they're well versed to be able to assist in that. So one thing that's I think is really important, and I'll tell you from my experience as part of a regional center, is leadership. And really the center can only go as far as their leader. So Steve's here. He was APCO's Director of the Year for 2021. So APCO is a large-scale organization for professional communications officers. It's the gold standard for dispatch. And to not only have Steve recognized here in the Commonwealth, he's recognized nationally as the Director of the Year. Steve also sits on the 911 Commission. He's the dispatch representative in the state for 911. So, really to have that type of leadership in the center is what leads to the center's success. So I think we're very lucky to have a center with such strong leadership. So we talked about benefits already when we looked at the study, and the same benefits are what we're going to see with Holbrook. Increased level of service, trained telecommunicators, 40 versus 3, and more opportunity for grants, not only for these grants as we develop and we move into the center right now, but other things as technology changes in future years. We can still, through the center, apply for those grants from State 911 to upgrade things, whether it be radios, portable radios for the officers, mobile radios in the fire trucks or in the police cars, but things as our equipment becomes obsolete that we would be able to apply through and have access to grant funding that we never would as a standalone center. So again, as we talked about career growth, a radio system. I think this is one thing that Steve's probably most proud of, and we've talked about quite a bit. We had a long discussion about this, and I looked at some of our radio equipment today, and I'll show you that in a slide in a second. But really, they have an extensive radio network that would take our 2-site system that we currently have and expand it over a portion of the state. And it's a system that they're continuing to expand, and it's just a huge benefit for the community. And not only do they have this, robust system, but they monitor that system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As we had a discussion today, it's no longer going to be Sean's responsibility to be listening to the system and hearing a tone to realize, ooh, power's out at that site, or we're having a problem. We got to make sure the generator is working. This is going to be monitored remotely 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they have 4 highly trained communication specialists. They're known as COMLs. It's a FEMA designation. But if we had a large scale event or tragic incident here, if you took our train crash from last week and turned that into a large derailment and a major problem, they can actually send these COMLs out to the site, that they can actually come out and establish a communications network here and provide us with a more robust system as we're managing multiple departments and agencies coming into Sherborn to assist us. So this just gives you another, we saw 10,000 911 calls basically with our 6 community study. They're currently handling over 33,000 calls per year. So adding our 1,500 or so into it isn't going to be a huge influx for them, but it just shows, as we talked about, the repetition, the amount of calls and the amount of incidents that they're handling compared to what our dispatchers are handling. This is just more on their call volume. I think this is the most important point here when we look at their 911 calls. So 99.85% of their calls are answered in 10 seconds or less. I will tell you that we can't meet that standard here. We probably can't even meet the 100% of calls being answered in 20 seconds or less. We have one person. If we have even one multi-vehicle car accident can create 2, 3, 4, 5 911 calls. Our one person can't even get to the second call. So the fact that we can see 100% of 911 calls answered within 20 seconds, that's something that we could never meet. And that meets a National Fire Prevention Act standard where we have to answer 90% of the calls within 15 seconds. I don't think it's so much actually that how quickly they're answering the calls, but more the way they're answering the calls. So as I said, we have a single dispatcher. They're answering the call. As they're answering the call, they're trying to get as much information as they possibly can. They're then trying to either dispatch the police, the fire, both, listen to the radio, answer on the radio, all while still trying to maintain communication with that person on the phone to get the most updated information. What they're able to do at the center because of their staffing is when a 911 call comes in, there's 3 people that answer the call. One person who is the primary contact, they're the one that's talking back and forth and gathering the information, someone on the police dispatch side, and then someone on the fire dispatch side that are able then, as they hear things discussed, able to dispatch the appropriate resources and make sure that our officers or our firefighters are getting to the scene not only in a timely manner, but much faster than we're doing now. It's quite impressive and something that we would never be able to match. So again, their total calls for service, they've seen almost 60,000 calls. So it speaks again to their volume. So we've already gone through this on the assessment and the grants and what's been available to us. Just to give you an idea of what Steve has done, this is just for FY22. They're managing $2.5 million worth of grants from State 911, something that would never be available to us. And in this example, he had talked to us about bringing Abington Police on board, and nearly $800,000 went to Abington to revamp their radio system. So incredible benefit that we would never be able to do.
Chief, quick thing, and
Yes.
I don't want to cut this short or anything, but we do have a long agenda tonight. I think there's a lot of
Okay.
support for this, so maybe hit
Yeah.
some of the high notes on some of the
Yeah,
stuff.
so this just gives you an example of the radio system as it currently stands. It would expand with the addition of Sherborn, so I won't get too technical into that, but just to show you. The next slide goes in to show the redundancy that not only is there radio frequency transmissions, but also microwave backups, and everything, it has a backup. And as Steve puts it, the system is self-healing. If one link goes down, the next link picks it up. As an officer on the street, we don't notice the difference, but he's notified and then the system can be repaired. So this just shows some pictures of the center. The picture on the left is the building. It's actually an $8+ million addition to the Holbrook Police and Fire Department that State 911 paid for. And then just some pictures of the inside of the center. And we don't have to go too in depth to the consoles, but there's 12 dispatch positions and you have your supervisory position, beautiful wall of monitors that can show one video or be broken up to show many different things depending on what the center's needs are at any given time. And that's it.
Okay, very good. If you could stop sharing screen, please.
Yep.
Okay, is there any questions from the board first? I know we asked some questions in between the two presentations.
Just what kind of support is he looking for tonight?
Yeah, that was my question as well.
Yeah,
I believe
so-
there's a grant. Oh, so go ahead.
So what I would be asking for tonight was a vote from the board to sign a letter of attestation, which is to say that we are willing to join the center. What that will allow Steve to do is to complete the grant paperwork, which is due to State 911 by March 3rd. And so it is a tight deadline to get in this year's grant cycle. And then that would allow us to move forward. We would come back at a later date to sign an intermunicipal agreement for the governance of the center and the agreement between Holbrook and Sherborn. So, and I gave Diane 2 examples of that letter of attestation. One that you would vote in, Eric, that you would sign as the chair, or one that you could designate Diane as the town administrator to sign.
George, go ahead.
I just want to ask to hear from Chief Ward. I know he's been involved in this. As Chief Galvin said, I know he's on board, but I'd love to just hear from him, his thoughts on this.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. Morrell. Yeah, so I'm fully in support of this. Like Chief Galvin said, I think before he started, this came up and we were talking about it. And as soon as he did start, we hit the ground running. This is important for me for a number of reasons for the fire department itself. The chief just mentioned the call taking, and we just had a fire recently that we got 3 911 calls on, and those 911 calls delayed notification of the fire department to respond to that fire a little bit, and luckily the outcome was still great and everything was fine. But when I started doing this, they said fires doubled inside buildings every 60 seconds, and now they're looking at like 20 seconds for that. And it's because of the modern combustibles that we buy at Walmart and IKEA and all that, and things just burn a little more intensely. So, seconds really count in our business. Minutes count, seconds count. The joke is nothing happens in Sherborn. I think we can kind of throw that out the window for some of the things that we've had the last couple of years. We get incidents here. We do the same incidents that Natick and Framingham do. We just do less of them. That's what I've found since I've been here. And I think that being supported by professional dispatchers is going to do the town great service going forward. And I just fully support this, and the fire department fully supports it as well.
Good, thank you. I had one quick question. The other 4 or 5 communities that we did a study with was in Medford, Medway, Dover, Holliston, whatever. Are we reliant on any of their votes? So we're going to vote to do this and move forward with it. We have no connection. We don't rely on them having to enter this as well or anything.
No, this is an independent decision for the town of Sherborn to move forward.
Okay. I'll ask briefly if there's any, if you use the raise hand feature, are there any brief, quick questions from the public? That's all. I don't see any raise hand features there. All right. Are there any motions relative to this? Basically, it'll be a motion that Chief Galvin has suggested. Yeah,
Yes,
Paul.
Can I make a motion that the town send a letter of attestation to join the Holbrook Emergency Dispatch Center?
Okay.
Second.
Motion second. Okay, all in favor, Jeff,
All right.
George,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
and I might as well. Great, and thank you for a
Thank you.
well thought out presentation. And this is thank you, Zach Ward, Chief Ward as well. And I look forward to executing this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just want to say one quick thing, just to everyone that's here, and I know people didn't have any questions, but if you talk to your friends, your neighbors, or there's any discussion around town, my door is open. Have them reach out. I'm happy to talk to anyone and explain this, because if anyone does have any concerns, I want to address those early. We're already talking about putting together some sort of an informational flyer to be distributed at town meeting, and to offer an open house, and to some other things to make sure we answer all the community's concerns.
And thanks, Steve, for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
But
Yeah.
just a
Thank you very much.
clarification on that, for an intermunicipal agreement, we're not going to need town meeting approval.
No, I was saying that I would be able to provide information to residents. It's a good forum to be able to provide some,
Okay,
the IMA would be signed by the town, by this board.
there's not gonna be a warrant article on this,
No,
other than the budgets, but
correct.
it's going to be a town meeting requirement to this. I'm just speaking as a lawyer.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay,
Well, thank you very much.
thank you. Absolutely.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, moving on. We're going to ominous budgets. It should be easy when we have 7 of them. First up, elder housing budget and capital item for window replacement. Kitty Sturgis and Steve Petty. How you doing, Kitty?
Thank you very much for having us this evening. Just go a sidetrack. I love this discussion about this new regionalization, since Bob had been my late husband had been a dispatcher here in town for 10 years, and he loved the job. But he was always looking for better ways to improve it for the town, and I think you're on the right track. And thank you very much. Okay, if I can just make a couple of thank yous and then we'll get right into the budget. We never have enough time to say thank you to different people around town that helped the residents at Woodhaven. And if I could just list them quickly, and if I've forgotten someone, I apologize. The select board, your administration of Diane and Jeannie, they're fantastic. The Board of Health has been extremely helpful for us dealing with the COVID incidents, et cetera, or issues, not incidents. And the police department, they're always there when there's some troubles, and fire and rescue. And most of all, DPW, who with the snow, they are incredible, that they keep the paths open. And I know Mother Nature does not agree about the ice, and we have to understand that. But I just want to say thank you before we start our budget. And I will turn it over to Steve Petty because he knows more about this than I do. Steve?
I shared my
muted.
screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve, you're muted.
Is the screen visible? I shared the budget here.
Yes,
I see it.
Yeah, it's
very,
good.
thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
Steve?
He's not muted, but maybe his microphone is not turned on his computer. It looks like he's talking, but there's definitely no sound.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know what his computer setup is like, but I think you have to at least have whatever the software identify the microphones, identify the hardware.
Okay, I can hear him when we have our virtual meetings, but obviously it's a different setup. Do you want me to try to go through this for you?
Oh, 2 options. Do you want us to just move on to the next budget, or do you want to try it yourself? I'll leave it up to you, Kitty.
I
can come back to you.
Why don't you come back to us, and I'll try to get to Steve right now.
Yep, you can set up maybe a fake Zoom meeting with him or something to try to test it one-on-one, but maybe it's for the best.
Okay.
We have a lot to go through, and I think it'd be easy to come back to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. So next up will be Council on Aging budget. COA Director, Pete Hoagland. Is Pete here? Hard for me to see.
He's in the meeting. I saw him in the meeting, but I don't know if he's muted. I can't see with my screen covered here.
I see
Susan
Pete
Kelleher
Hoagland.
is talking, but she's muted. Susan, I can see you talking, but you need to unmute.
I'm sorry. There we go.
Yep, now we can hear you.
Thank you, George. So I just wanted to, Pete is the chair of the board and Jerry's our treasurer, so they're my support system. The budget is pretty self-explanatory. Our salary had gone up to 4%, and we also subsidized part of our salaries. For the assistant director, we subsidize about $7,000 through our lifetime learning program. And then for our elder advocate, we take it about $3,000, we cover $3,000 as part of our formula grant. And the formula grant is what we receive from the state every year based on the number of older residents that we have. So We get about $9,000 for that. So 3,000 of that is we subsidize for the elder advocate salary. And again, the lifetime learning salary, we've been subsidizing as well. So no other changes on salaries. And then on the bottom line, I don't know. Yeah, we're on the vets.
Gonna go back here.
No, you're, oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so
Back
all
one
these,
more page, one more page.
yeah, you're missing a page.
Go back up, Steve.
No,
Jeff.
no, I'm not, the other stuff, that this is,
Go up a little bit. There you go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
there we go. So some of the changes that we made this year on the bottom, we tried to stay level funded. And you'll notice that we increased our space rental. So we moved some of the categories around. The space rental we increased due to the fact that we do so many events over at Pilgrim Church, and we were only paying them. We were making a donation for about $1,000 to $1,500. And so we've increased that to $3,000 because we hold 33 senior cafes during the year, and to help them cover the cost of electricity and heat and using their ovens and their facilities. We also do our book club there and some of our lifetime learning. We also expect to use some space over at the UU Church, St. Teresa's, Unity Farm, and the community center. So we just felt like we needed to up those donations, what we call donations for space rental. We also we took some money out of our exercise program. You'll notice we zeroed it out, and originally 2 years ago when I came on board, we did a collaboration with Sherborn Rec, and they were handling all of our classes. And we have since there's been a change and Christina has come on board to the COA. We've taken 2 of those classes back, but right now they make money, but they don't make money even. So we thought that we would give up some of the money that we made in exercises and give it over to the rec department so that they could also start some new programs and seed money. I don't know whether they did that or not, but that was our thought behind that. We increased the budget item for the drop-in support, and that's our weekly lunches, just due to the fact that as everybody has experienced, the prices of food has gone up. That's one of our more popular programs. They meet every week. We serve lunch, and we also deliver to 10 to 15 seniors that are homebound and can't get out. Everything else is pretty much the same, and we did shave a little bit off of our total expenses. The only other thing we kept is transportation, and we haven't spent in the last 2 years. We haven't spent a lot in transportation because I had gotten almost $14,000 worth of grants. So that covered all of our transportation costs for the last 2 years, but that grant has just recently run out. And so we really promoted using the JFK services, especially for people that had to give up their licenses or they can't drive or it's bad weather. So we felt like we needed to keep that line item in. And we do expect that next, going forward, we will be using that line item. Any questions?
Yes.
That seems to make sense.
Hello?
Oh, yeah, Paul, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. You guys are real small on my screen, by the way, when we're sharing a screen. So I'm sorry if I don't see. If you can use the raise hand, it helps. But yeah, go ahead, Paul.
All right, so a couple of points. First of all, I think we have a really wonderful program here in town, and wanted to commend the Council on Aging and the director all involved with what's being done. Second, I wanted to make a comment about transportation, because way back when I had a role in setting this thing up with that JFK transportation. It is absolutely essential where you have a community like Sherborn that's so spread out and so many roads don't have sidewalks, that there be a means for people to get transportation services in order to maintain their quality of life, to be able to get to medical appointments, to be able to get to wherever they need to go, and not be so dependent on having a relative come in from some other place in Massachusetts to bail them out. Great program, needs to be supported, needs to be funded, needs to be available. And my final comment is that it's basically a level funded budget. And that always makes me wonder whether we shouldn't be doing more for our seniors. Level funding in the world of inflation and increased cost of everything. Shouldn't the budget contain a little more?
Well,
Paul, we'll remember that when you give your, Paul, we'll remember that when you give your speech about tax rate.
I'll put up my hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Marianne.
Yeah, just an observation. I totally support the overall budget and certainly the mission. I note it is a level budget, but Paul, last year, in the last half year, you can see, or more, there were funds that have not been spent. So those funds presumably are still in the coffers of the COA. So, you know, they have a number of thousands of dollars, 5,000 here, a couple thousand there, that they have, but are probably not going to be spent by the end of the year. So that will enhance the budget next year, presumably.
Well, and just a lot of that was covered last year. We didn't spend nearly as much as we budgeted because a lot of it was covered under that grant programs that we had gotten through MCOA and the state for providing food and, like I said, transportation. And, you know, we basically had to cut our programs a lot due to COVID. So we're hoping that, you know, we'll start to resume and be able to spend our money, but we also tried to respect the request from advisory asking us to keep level funding budget. So
bottom line is, I think this is a good budget. You've done it well, Susan.
Yeah.
Sir, can I just make a response to what George said?
Yeah, go ahead.
Tax rate. For every senior that we keep in their home in town means that the property isn't being sold to a young family that's going to come in with kids. And all those kids, if you look at the numbers, how much it costs us to educate those kids, we actually save dollars and make life better for our seniors. So we want programs here that are going to keep our seniors in town and keep them focused on activities that are working for them, and to discourage people selling out and going somewhere else and having all replacement young families with children.
All right.
One way to keep people in town is to keep the tax rate down. And that helps to keep people in their homes.
Right.
And the only way to keep tax rates down is not spend money.
All right, I do want to rein it into the COA on here. I will say, Paul, you said that, you know, you want to make sure they have adequate services and you want to spend more. If you have maybe either this or maybe later, if you have an idea of something you'd like to increase, but other than that, I think we have a proposal here by the professionals that actually run this department. I think the proposal looks reasonable, and unless there's something specific where you think that, you know, I want to spend more on this or give this better service. Yeah, I think we're done talking in generalities. I agree with you that actually is beneficial to keep seniors. I mean, my parents lived here until their 90s, and yeah, I plan to do the same. Okay, is there anything else from the board? Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Thank you very much. Good presentation.
Thank you,
Okay.
Susan.
I think Steve rejoined the call, so do you want to go back to elder housing, you think?
Well, give me a sound check, Steve. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Kinda.
A bit of an echo.
Yeah, it's not that great.
Now?
Yeah. Yeah,
Let's
it's not
get through
that
it.
great. We
Let's
kind
get
of
through it.
Okay, let's give it a shot. And if it winds up not working out,
All right, I'll try to speak a little louder and a little slower. The budget this year, really the only major change this year, and I apologize, but I'm going to confuse you all again because this is yet another situation where a capital item will be paid for out of a revolving account. But we are looking for, at this point, approximately $300,000 to replace all of the windows at Woodhaven. And we have put in $30,300, which elder housing will be paying off the debt service each year. That's what is estimated if we do go as high as $300,000. Now, again, my understanding is it does require a vote of town meeting to approve the borrowing. But that's because the town would be the guarantor, but elder housing will in fact be paying all of the debt service, so it will not have any tax impact on the citizens of Sherborn. And we are working right now on getting some firm numbers, and our hope is that prior to the advisory hearing, we'll have a real number for this. And then assuming that we move forward after town meeting, obviously, we will be putting together a bid package, and the project will be going out to bid. And obviously, we have to deal with prevailing wage and anything that has to do with public bidding. But there have been a few ups and downs in the rest of the budget, but there are very few, really not many changes. So if you have any questions on our big project this year or the budget in general, go ahead and ask.
any questions from the board?
No, looks good to me.
Yeah, I would comment that this seems better than level funded. If I look at this, it's actually going down. If I'm reading it right.
Paul, there was $100,000 in there for a roof this year, this current fiscal year. And that's what, which we don't have in this proposed budget. So that's why you're seeing it going down.
Yeah, good point, Kitty. And I think the way to look at it is if you took the $90,000 out of last year's budget, we would have been at roughly 261,000. And if you take the debt service out of this year's budget, we would be at about 283. So we're up a little over $20,000, but we are still well within our ability to pay from rent income.
Looks good to me.
All right.
Looks
Yeah, very
to
good.
me.
So no other questions or comments from the board? Okay, very good. Thank you very
Thank
much
you,
for
Eric.
having, yeah, thank you for
Thank
having
you.
patience, and thank you for tuning back in.
All right, thanks so much.
Actually,
Wonderful help with Zoom.
can I ask a quick question?
Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Steve, I forgot. I had heard that the property management contract might be changing. Is that factored into this? Is that
Yes,
that
it is.
accurate?
Yes, it is factored in, and it I believe it was a 4% increase.
Yeah, that's what it
Yep.
shows here.
Yep. And that's factored into this budget, yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you
Great.
all.
Thank you very much. Very good. Okay, up next, the Veterans Affairs thing is Diana Hook, the Veterans Agent. I saw her on here before there. She is. How you doing, Diana?
Yes, I am. I'm still here.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
there
let's
we
see, I think-
are.
yeah. I got
So
it.
Diana Hook, Veteran Services Officer. And as you can see, this is a level funded budget. We've got my stipend at the top. And the two major expenses, as in previous years, are activities for Veterans Day and for Memorial Day. This Veterans Day expenses were a little bit lower because we had a small luncheon where we just invited the veterans and a significant other to a small event at the town hall. I'm planning and I'm projecting that next November we'll be back to regular, larger Veterans Day celebration. This Memorial Day, I've already purchased the flags and markers so that we can fix that up. And I've reached out to Mike Kickham, so with discussions about a potential for a Memorial Day parade and activities as we've done in previous years. One item to bring to everyone's attention, there is a line item there for the $3,000. There are some monies that are in the budget, which at this point I'm not projecting using, but they're there just in case an indigent veteran moves into town, or one wouldn't want this to happen. One of the current veterans needs help from us. The town is required to upfront the money, and then we will be reimbursed by the Department of Veteran Services. So most likely we'll be returning that money, but it's there in case of emergency.
If I could comment that we've been doing this for many years, that we set aside this $3,000 so that no veteran would have a gap or a period of time where they're without benefits and without help. And we should have this every year. And it, my recollection is this hasn't been used, at least in a number of years, but it shows care, and it shows that you know, we're not going to let anybody fall through the cracks. This is a safety net. It should be appropriated to have that money available.
I agree as well. Any discussion amongst the board? Okay. Well, very good. Seems like I have strong approval here. Thank you very much, Diana. Thank you for your effort in this. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Historical Commission, Peggy Novak.
Hi. In addition to myself, Susie Wheelwright, who is my co-chair, is here, and Jean Goldfield, who acts as our treasurer, is here, and Jean will actually run through our budget request.
Jean, you there?
Yes, I was just unmuting myself. Good evening. Our budget this year for FY23 has two parts. One of the parts is a one-time request of $2,000 in addition to our regular annual budget. The one-time request is, you may have noticed that as you come into the historic district in town, there are 4 signs that have gradually been falling down and disappearing because they've just failed. We are requesting this money to replace the 4 signs. We've been able to use encumbered funds to pay for 2 of those signs already that are in process, and the $2,000 is for the other 2 signs. The rest of our annual budget has 2 parts. One is for maintenance of the Cyrus Dallin memory statue, and the second is for our ongoing sign program, an example of which you approved a couple of years ago that is now probably under some snow up at Farm Pond. So that's our budget.
I have a question, Gene, and Paul's on here. There was an issue with the historic signs that there's some sort of graphics on it that they're thinking of updating at the state level due to it being a sort of a perceived to be an offensive historic image.
Yeah,
Is that-
these are a different set of signs. The ones that you're referring to, if I may, are statewide
right
signs that we've
Okay.
taken. We've sort of taken those to be something that we're interested in and want to do something about. And then Mr. Durantz has pointed out to us that at the state level, there's some concern about the content. And so at the moment, we've actually spent time looking into what that would cost. And we have that information available at such time as it becomes possible to move ahead with that.
Okay,
But those are a
thanks.
separate set of signs.
Thank you.
Gene, perhaps you could explain what the other two categories of signs are.
I'm sorry, you mean in our regular budget?
In the one-time request and in our
Yeah.
regular budget, what distinguish between the two kinds of signs?
Oh, okay. The four signs that we're replacing for entering the historic district is one type of sign. They're meant to welcome citizens and people passing by into town, into the historic district. The second set of signs are educational in nature, and are one is already at Farm Pond. We're hoping when the library is more available to have the materials that we need to complete the second sign. So that's part of our sign program.
And to
Is
clarify,
that
how
what you
many
had more?
total? Oh, sorry. How many total signs was there? You said there was 4, and then there was another set of signs.
The four signs are for the entering the historic district. The other signs that we're talking about are ongoing educational signs. One's completed for Farm Pond. The second one will be at the library and has to do with cottage industries in the area in the 19th century around the Maple Street area.
We're
And then-
trying to educate the town about particular sites in town and the history of those sites. We have many interesting stories that we can tell with the signs, and so that we call those the historic site signs.
Okay. Mary Ann, please.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting anybody spend more money than they're asking this year, but over the long term, do you have a plan over coming years of budgeting in for more of those site signs? Because it seems to me they're relatively few, and there's a town could benefit by having more.
I think, Susie, you want to speak to that, or I'll just say something.
I think our initial program idea was for 3 signs. The second one would be near the library, near Maple Street, to explain the cottage industries that existed in that area, particularly on Maple Street. And the third one would be Dowse's Corner. And I think it might have, in addition to the very interesting history of Dowse's Corner, it might try to tie architectural elements, because there are so many very nice ones in that area, to the historic elements of the area. So I guess I would say, three signs are planned at this point. That doesn't mean only 3, but that's where we are right now.
Because of our budget limitations and the cost of the signs, we found that financing one a year is as much as we've been able to manage. And the second sign had to be put on hold when COVID came around and limited our ability to access some of the materials that were needed to complete it. And our thinking was that we would work our way through those three signs and then reevaluate if there were other locations in town that would warrant signs like that, or a different type of sign that identified the historic site without as much information, but that we would reevaluate after we had completed the three planned signs.
Okay, thanks.
And the district signs came up kind of not a total surprise, because we've been watching them deteriorate for years. But a little over a year ago, Sean contacted us when two of them succumbed to the snow and the plows. And it became clear that something needed to be done to replace those signs. So that was why they've been added in as a separate line item in our budget.
And not to beat this up any further, 'cause I know it's a relatively small budget, but your price estimate, is it based on just past work or a quote or something like that?
Yes, that's right. We know exactly what the additional two signs will cost, because we were able to use about $2,000, a little less than $2,000 for the two signs that are in process in fabrication.
Okay. All right, any other questions from the board?
Seems like a good budget.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for the time and the effort put into this. Okay.
Thank you.
Up next, I believe, is the building commissioner, Chris Canny, our building commissioner. You out there, Chris? There you are.
I'm here. Hello.
How you doing?
All right. I hope this is real easy. Everything follows guidance except for one line, which is the assistant electrical inspector, which has been historically much lower than our actual use of that person. Our normal electrical inspector only works 2 days a week, works in the evenings. We have a call often for trench inspections or other things that need to happen during daylight hours or off hours, or emergency inspections with the fire department, things like that. And our assistant wiring inspector has been very helpful to us to be able to do that, but we end up paying him quite a bit more than we've always budgeted for him. So this year I just adjusted his line for 80 inspections, which is, a hair over what he's been doing the last few years anyway. So it should cover us, and therefore we're not borrowing from other line items to try to cover the cost of this person who does inspections for us.
Okay.
This makes sense, because I assume we're getting, this doesn't take into account all the fees we get for these from builders.
Correct. And some of them, especially when they're emergency inspections or ones that are scheduled off hours, we're taking a special inspection fee just to set that up. If somebody wants a Monday morning inspection, they don't want to wait till Tuesday, then they pay a $50 fee. So it gets covered anyway.
Right. So does this budget is just showing expenses, not income from the inspections department. So
yeah, if you wanted to see the income, last year we did 224,199. So far through this fiscal year, we're at 125,678. So we're already over what we cost halfway through the fiscal year. So we're in pretty good shape.
Great.
It's been another busy bunch of years here in town, and so the numbers are up in general, and the fees, while we haven't adjusted the rates because the cost of construction has gone up, we're seeing higher fees just because projects are more expensive now. So if a kitchen went up 15%, the permit fee went up 15%, and so it's all kind of working just based on the amount of inflation that we've got. So
makes sense. Good job, Chris.
Yeah, and I will say that communities all over the area, we're seeing spikes in building permits pulled and other construction related permits during the COVID year, specifically for residential. So, and interesting. All right, any other questions from the board?
Looks like a good budget.
Okay, very good. Thank you again, Chris.
I tried. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Up next, finance accounting, Deb Seffering, sorry. interim finance director.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, this is my budget and this is the first time actually putting it together. So I put some, did quite a bit of analysis trying to figure it out. And as far as the salaries go, the appointed official is just the regular 4% COLA increase. And on the payroll and benefits coordinator, you can see it's higher than budgeted. And that's because starting in FY2 actual, our payroll coordinator became a payroll and benefits coordinator, which resulted in a pay increase for this year, which will roll over into FY23 at an additional cost of $6,000. But I did reduce the assistant accountant hours by 5 hours, because there's definitely some efficiencies going on. So we're going to have a decrease of about $9,400 there. So that's salaries actually end up netting a little bit lower than they would if everybody got the 3.6% COLA. And as far as the data processing services, we have a couple unusual things going on in beginning in FY22. It was decided that because the collector went to VADAR, that expense would be paid out of the accountant's budget, but it was never budgeted in FY22. So I included it in the FY23 budget. So that's why you see the pop of about $7,000 there. And then as far as the annual audit goes, every other year we have to do an actuarial audit, and that will be happening next year. When it happened in FY21, it was included in the consulting service. So that's why you don't see it in the audit number, but it really does belong in the audit number. And then finally, I think it's a good idea to continue on with the consulting service that we've been using this year, because she's just a fountain of knowledge. And I think that in the long run, it really saves us a lot of time and energy. So that's pretty much the whole thing.
All right, any questions from the board?
If I could, just to give her a compliment for the department.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're doing a nice job, and I'm feeling very confident about your contribution to the town and this whole finance section of it. Be doing well.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Very good. And again, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for this effort. It was well done. Okay, without any further ado, I'll move on to our insurance budget. As again, Deb Siffring, but this time with Diane Moores as well.
Yeah, Diane, do you want me to talk or you want to do the talking?
No, sure, go. No, you can go right. I just want to add that I want to let Paul know that I did talk to the insurance carrier, because he had mentioned it the last time we talked briefly about the insurance, and it looks as though they're going to give us cybersecurity again without charging us. My has determined that that's what they're going to do.
Excellent.
Which is very helpful. Okay, Deb.
Okay. Yeah. Diane and I worked on this together, and we, reached out to the insurance carrier, and they gave us the estimates for FY23, which we feel pretty confident about. But it's actually quite a bit higher than FY22, and that's because the FY22 budget really wasn't right. And I'll take responsibility for that, because that was right when I was jumping on board. And when we received the quote, we received it included police and fire AD&D. Well, it included the professional insurance, which I thought was police and fire AD&D. So I put it on that line, and then we received the bill from a different insurance carrier, which is police and fire AD&D. So that truly didn't get budgeted for FY22, which is going to, be a little issue for FY22. So we're correcting it in FY23.
Any questions from the board? All right. No, great. Thank you both. Yeah, it does make sense what you said there. Absolutely. Okay. That was pretty good. That brings to a close agenda item number 4, omnibus budgets. Diane, a quick question. What else is left on the omnibus budgets? I know we're meeting about the non-budget, non-capital items on Saturday. Is there anything else for operational budget
I don't believe so, Eric. I
Yeah.
I looked over the list today and I actually talked to Jeannie about it and I said to her, I went back and forth with her and I think I have all our budget makers have come forward. So the
Okay.
next thing I'm going to do at the next meeting is start to bring the capital items.
Okay.
Saturday will be
Diane.
warrant articles.
One thing that I would appreciate if you could come back next time with our Board of Selectmen budget one more time, because I think we had made some suggested changes to it last time
Yes.
that I'd like to just, I think maybe we should revisit it since it is our budget for our board.
Okay.
That maybe we should just see those changes one last time. I think that makes sense.
Okay. I'll bring it back to the 24th.
Perfect.
Okay.
And I will
thank you.
comment that our budget was before advisory last night and it seemed to go over well.
Okay.
So one other comment was that I got an email today from Diane that said our free cash was certified. What was that number, 2,000,009?
Was 6, I think.
2.6,
Something, yeah.
6 million?
2.6, yeah.
Better than
2.658.
Isn't that better than we've seen in other years?
Yes, it is.
So that's good as we go this budget season. Thanks.
It's good and bad. It means we overtaxed.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right. So going on to agenda item number 5, consideration of acceptance of grants. First up is Mass Department of Fire Services Safety Equipment Grant, $12,000. Presenting is Zach Ward, Fire Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make this 30 seconds or less. This is the third year in a row we've been able to get this grant. This year we got it for 40 EMS coats. So they're going to be like reflective jackets that can be worn in the winter. It's going to be really good for us because it means that our members aren't going to have to wear their fire gear unnecessarily into people's homes in inclement weather. And obviously the jackets are kind of expensive for us to outfit. Our whole group would be pretty expensive. So we're really happy to get this grant. And again, we're just asking for the board to vote to accept these funds. And it's $12,425.
So moved.
Yeah, I saw that coming. All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, Jeff,
Hi.
Marion,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Paul?
I'm always in favor of accepting mine.
Absolutely.
Aye.
I'll take that as an aye, and I am I as well. Great. Thank you very much, Zach.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
Moving on and accepting money, we have Community Compact IT Grant, Gino Carlucci. And I don't know, Gino, if you want to, we'll wait to do the next one after that. So Gino, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Gino, it
Okay.
amazes me in your picture that the sun's still shining at Town Hall.
Yeah, sun always shines off on Town Hall, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's the new street lights creating plenty of light out there.
It's ironically from the direction of the car chargers.
Yeah, so, okay, so the Community Compact IT grant is for, it's a little over 11,000 and it's to acquire equipment to permit hybrid meetings. It consists of the equipment, there's 3 sets of it, one for town hall, one for police station, one for library. It consists essentially of a rolling stand with a large monitor and a audio video conference device on top so during the meetings, the board who's meeting will see on the screen people at home on Zoom, and then they will see also the board live. So that's what this one's about.
So it's essentially, it's execute the hybrid meetings, really. Is that
correct?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I do think, I'm with George where I'd like to get back into live meetings, but I think we've created a certain model here that's not going to go away fully. And I think it's not just convenient, but I think it actually helps accessibility to a lot of people. And I love the idea of a hybrid. So I don't know if there's any other discussion from the board. Yeah, Marion?
Yeah, I agree. I'm wondering about the mobility of these things. Like, will it be easy to move them from room to room? Or if we have like 2 meetings in the 2 rooms in town hall, can we, how hard are they to move around? Because,
They're on wheels, so they can just be rolled around.
right, like from the library to town hall and vice versa?
Well,
or-
that might be a
No.
little difficult from the library to town hall.
Yeah.
You needed at
Down that
least
road.
to plan in advance. You know, you got steps to go down and such. You'd probably have to have people carry it down the steps.
Yeah, of course. I'm just wondering if that's possible. Yeah.
If it works out and it's desirable, they're not hugely expensive. As I said, 11,000 buys 3 sets. So if we wanted an additional set, or say it turns out that one group is not using it in the police or library, that could be moved back to town hall on a semi-permanent basis, something like that.
I think 3 is a good number for basically a test period, to see how they're used and where they need to be.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Yep, I support it as well. So what do you need from us? Basically, a vote to support?
Motion to accept the grant.
Second,
I just want to make sure that's what you need, Gino, essentially.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. So all in favor, Jeff,
aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
George, are you there?
He's muted.
He might have stepped away just for a second, which is fine.
Yeah.
Paul?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Yeah, 4 votes. And Gina, we're on again for the charging station grant.
Yes. So the charging station grant, I applied for both of them at the same time, the level 2 and the level 3. And they just announced the level 3 awards last week. And so this grant is for, the level 3 are much more expensive than the level 2. Level 2 was roughly 10,000 for a 2-port station. The level 3 is a little over 50,000 for 1 port. So it's much more expensive. On the other hand, it's the capacity, it's called 250 RPH, which stands for range per hour. So for 1 hour of charge, you get a range, it increases the range of the car for about 250 miles, which at this point, most electric vehicles are in that ballpark. So in 1 hour, almost every car could be fully charged. And short of that, they can get to 80% charge in about 20 minutes. So it's a much more desirable charger than the level 2, at least much more convenient. You don't have to keep your car there for very long. This grant is for $47,299. And the town would be responsible for some costs that are not covered by the grant to the tune of about $8,000. So that's where I had discussed this with David at the time of application, and he said, yeah, great, we'll cover it. So just go forward. So that's where we are.
So I
I guess-
move to-
I'm just curious, where would the 8,000 come from?
That's a good question. It's got to come from town funds. He had noted at the time the town building budget. But we'll have to check that out, I guess.
I'm just gonna guess Sean has an answer.
Sean can always just come up with $8,000 out of the budget. Sean,
I wouldn't say that out loud. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
you're muted, Sean. We can't
Sean,
hear
feel
you.
free. Can we unmute him?
I don't know.
I know.
While we're waiting
First
for.
time ever I've had a hard time hearing Sean.
While we're waiting for Sean, I just want to recognize Gino's ability to write grants and get money for this town. If we counted up all the grants over the years that Gino has written and successfully gotten for the town, it's really quite impressive. So thanks to Gino.
No question about that at all.
And from a sustainability too, for the charging stations.
All kinds of things.
Well, Sean, I'm assuming you don't, we're probably gonna vote for this. So I don't know if you have anything critical to add to this.
He just wrote a chat that he can't unmute for some
Oh.
reason.
Let me try
I even
again.
clicked on ask to unmute.
I did, but I can't
Hmm.
unmute him either. This
Gonna
could
make a
be
joke.
han-
I could hear from here. But
This could be very handy, yes.
Sean, use your loudest voice. We can all hear you from our houses.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, it's
So
not good.
accept the grant. I'm confident that we can come up with the money to match it. And why turn away $47,000? It's the wave of the future, electric vehicles. Let's secure the money.
And if what was putting in 8 allows us to get 24, whatever the number was, seems to be appropriate. So I support it as well. So I believe we have a motion from Paul to accept the grant.
Yes.
A second.
Okay, all in favor, Jeff,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
I am as well. And by the way, I can't figure out how to unmute Sean either.
No, I couldn't either. I'm gonna lower his hand, I think.
I clicked ask to unmute, and sometimes that does it, and you have to do it.
I know.
Okay, if it's something critical, Sean, just text me or it sounds like it's solved. But either way, okay.
He
Moving
texted
on.
me and said it keeps saying the host won't let me unmute.
Yeah, I tried to click unmute. He may even need to sign out and sign back in or something.
Yeah, that
I
might
don't
be
know.
what you need to do, Sean. If you can hear us, sign out and sign back in.
Yeah, I've checked off here. I've checked off allow participants to unmute themselves. And since that's checked off, it might be a log on thing. Okay. Number 6, draft warrant checklist, warrant article proponents. We moved a few of them from Saturday here for a couple of reasons, one availability of proponents and stuff like that. So there's a couple of them. First one is the planning board has 2 articles, floodplain district and lot width. I believe the lot width is not being discussed. At least talk about the floodplain district, please, Gino.
Okay, Chris might want to open up.
Actually, it's fine, Gino, if you want to take it.
Okay. Well, this is actually it's not any significant article. FEMA has issued new guidelines on what zoning bylaws addressing floodplain need to address. And we had most of it already. There's just a few things that we're adding, one being definitions, some statements in the purpose section. There's an addition about recreation vehicles in the floodplain. And we already designated the maps. I think an important point is there's no map changes resulting from this. There may be in the future, but what's a floodplain now is still the same floodplain. So there's just kind of some procedural clarifications. And I don't know if anyone needs more specifics on it, I can provide it, but that's the essence of it.
Okay. And I can say we've gone through this a few times when I was on the planning board. I've done it in Framingham. I actually advocated for it, and we've done it here since I've been on the select board. I think it's more or less an administrative requirement and helps. And correct me if I'm wrong, Gino, helps individuals maintain their flood insurance as well.
Correct. It's mandatory to stay in this flood insurance program.
Exactly. All right. Any questions or motions relative to this?
Move this. Are we taking motions or are we following?
Oh, that's great. So that's a good question. We don't, and that is a very good question. It's the first time. So we do the budget as a whole. In the past, yes, we actually have voted to support or not support, and if we're not the endorser or whatever else, various articles, non-financial articles. So unless someone else disagrees, it seems appropriate that we actually vote to support or not support this article.
Right. Yeah, 'cause this doesn't matter. My whole issue with the budgets is they contribute to the whole. This is completely separate. So
okay.
Don't we vote to support or not support again when we have our joint meeting with advisory?
Well, we would just say this was our vote tonight that we voted to support this article.
Okay.
That's what we have done in the past. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I've moved to support the article.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Jeff,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
and Paul?
Aye.
Okay. Now, Gino, I know you said you weren't going to discuss, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're not going to discuss a lot with today. Do you think you're going to move forward at town meeting with a lot with article?
No, the planning board at the last meeting voted to ask that it be withdrawn.
Okay,
But there's a plan. A couple of members of the planning board will be working on the language over the spring and summer and come back next year with a proposal.
okay. Very good.
I don't know. I don't know if you want to go to Sean. He's back. He signed in. I don't know if he had a comment or not on the one related to the charging station, $8,000.
Okay.
He's back. He's back on here. You want to try unmuting again, Sean?
I don't see him actually.
He's down. He's
Right.
just at. He still can't. Don't click anything, Gary. Just let me click one. I'm just going to click once.
I see Christina Colleen. Is that him?
Oh, Christina and Sean are muted.
Try now, Sean. I don't know. I clicked on mute and it doesn't do it. Let's see here.
Give me 1 second. I need to plug in my laptop.
I don't know. Well, I'm sorry, Sean. I
Or
don't
might
know
be
what.
on Sean's
Maybe if you have an answer, just put it in the chat window there or something. I don't know how to unmute you. That's weird.
Again, this is another reason why I think we've had technological issues for 2 out of our last 3 meetings and
Well,
to have live meetings again.
this is a relatively minor one.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
technology doesn't always work. So we should be meeting live.
I disagree, but anyway, let's go on. I think are we waiting for is Addie May next or?
Yeah, Addie May, Affordable Housing Trust, update the bylaw, Addie May Ways.
Hi, yes, so I don't know, I've just checked into a Motel 8 with the kids for our ski event tomorrow. So we have the kids and the dog. So I didn't get a chance to get my computer yet, so I don't have the language in front of me, but I believe you all should have the language, and it's relatively straightforward that we are just bringing the language of the declaration of trust that was recorded this August with Middlesex Registry of Deeds in line with the housing trust language, which is the Chapter 31 of Sherborn's general bylaws. And we are basically in section 4.1, we are removing the oh my gosh, it's the legal term for a type of investment, prudent investment investor standard, since it's not allowed in municipal housing and housing trusts, municipal trusts. So.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Nope, I'll move that we support this article since I'm on the housing trust with Eddie.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Paul, we have a motion and a second to support the article for the Affordable Housing Trust.
Oh, yes, that one makes sense.
Okay, I thought so. Okay, all in
Thank you,
favor,
everyone.
Jeff,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
and I am as well. Okay, very good. Thank you very much, anyway. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie.
Okay, wrapping up here. Routine business. Do we have any select board reports? Yeah, okay.
Other than us being in favor of meetings that end at 9:23.
It's a half hour of executive session. It really is. It makes a big difference.
Doesn't make a big difference.
Yeah. How about town administrator reports? Diane?
Diane, you're muted.
Hi, sorry about that. I just wanted to let the board know that we're back up and running and starting department head meetings again. We had one last month and everybody was there and it was nice to hear what was going on in everybody else's department. So that's a good thing. And they decided they wanted to continue to meet monthly. So we'll have another one again in March. And I just want to remind everybody that on the 15th is that in-town Zoom with Central Mass Mosquito Control Project. And the link is on the town's website. That's it.
Well, and also we'll see everybody Saturday.
That's right. We'll see
Yes, we
everybody
will.
Saturday.
Yes, we will. I'm very optimistic that'll hold down to a 3-hour meeting.
So that's a clock, right?
It's what, it's 9 to 12.
But it starts at 9.
9,
Yes.
yep. All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. If there's no other discussion, then I'm gonna ask for a motion to close the meeting, go close the open session and
Susan
close the
Tyler,
meeting.
I think, has something to say, because she actually uses a real name today.
I know, with a middle initial too.
Sorry, my name was a leftover from some other time. No, I want to say you've had a wonderful meeting tonight, and I really enjoyed hearing about the dispatch over at the PD and the fire department. Well deserved and needed.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Absolutely. How's life out there in Western Mass?
We only got 6 inches of snow this last time. You guys got slammed.
Yeah, tell us about it.
What was worse was the ice, Susie.
Yeah.
No, surprisingly, it's not bad out here. Come on out, guys.
Is that an invitation, Susie?
Absolutely.
How about tomorrow?
Sure, why not? The tap is always open.
All right, I'll move to adjourn.
All right, so move. I'll tell you, Susie, the most west I'm gonna move is Ballard Lane. Okay. So a motion in a second. All in favor, Jeff?
Aye.
Marion?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And Paul?
I'm having too much fun, so I'm gonna say no.
I ain't having too much fun. Absolutely. I'm gonna say aye though. It's been too much of a split vote. Okay, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on the 24th.
Ciao, guys.
And a few of you on the
And the
17th.
12th, and the 12th, and the 12th.
I'll take the 12th, the 24th, and a few of you on the 17th as well. Okay, have a good one. Thank you all.
Ciao.